Hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. In this conference we are going to talk about the art of loving, presented by the 627 group in charge of the teacher Juana de Dios Avila Carrillo. Our goal is to let you know, based on this experience with the pandemic, how we can become better humans. Based on our work in class and experiences, we want to make you reflect on the following questions that we asked ourselves to carry out this work. What do I want for myself? What do I want for you? What are my successes and mistakes? What do I need to boost that love? Without further ado, we start this conference. Enjoy it.
The Art of Loving. Rich Fromm wrote a book that I consider an essential teaching to be able to be a good living, healthy and respectable and lasting relationship, but more than anything, a life that can be experienced in the same way. This book became not only teaching, but also a guide of criticism of current love. The word is titled The Art of Loving, and it's something I will talk about this day. A simple question sums up this whole topic. How many of us see ourselves in the mirror every day, saying out loud, "You are beautiful, let's be someone today"? Keep that question in your mind. Eric tells us a realistic idea that was being taught to us since we were little. Love has the answer to everything in life, and this is due to the fact that humans cannot live with it. For this reason, each person lives with a constant anguish and seeks to escape from the loneliness, and therefore love is transformed. What do I mean about this? We live alone, or so we think. We have the idea of needing love from the person or thing that our hobbies or idea of sticking to someone come from. It can be art, science, religion, even adoption of pet. But the illusion of the strongest form that this need can create is a love in the couple, the life partner, with which has nothing wrong. The grown self-strength pieces to the fact to how to love it, and that is what Fromm is trying to teach us. How many of us had or do not have a romantic relationship? Well, at the beginning, we are struggling the person in the distance. We find it interesting or attractive, and then we start a taste of infatuation. And if things go well, they talk and get to know each other truly and end up with a relationship that they consider stable. And the challenge starts there. At some point in our life, we all have considered the phrase "I love you" as a sacred thing that should not be said to any individual. That is also valid, because there is no rule that limits you to pronounce it, but who do you become when you say it? In my own experience, when I was in high school and I had a love relationship, at the moment of being with that person, my essence changed. That boy has someone who likes to clothes, attract attention, used to knit constantly, and was a bit rebellious. At the beginning, it was a common relationship, and at one point he asked me, "Why don't you do it?" That can refer to many things, but for now it's only referred to the image of a girl who loves to go shopping and be aware of fashion. This example is the most innocent way that invites to everything change of personality and tastes. Perhaps with another partner, he prompts you to another kind of activity. Her idea of Fromm's appear. The human feels so lonely and anxious that he does not belong anywhere. Even his partner, who at the moment in life is one of the most important things in the world, that you should forget who you are. That simple question can become the parent of many situations, many answers, but the trigger is the same alert. I have to adapt. With that simple question begins a constant change in the individual. He leaves his being completely to remain to the other as is unconditionally. Eric described it, two souls that come together, but up there. Clearly, this fact applies not only to women. Men go through the same things, and therein lies many actions and fear that people will develop in new relationships, because they believe that the first one to be unique and they consider it eternal. They will transform, and then they will find a new one. There is a grand or immature way of loving according to Fromm. What they consider correct is related to talk and had a while ago with my current partner. A few weeks ago, I was in a relationship. We began to talk about black flags, and in this he came to the topic of past relationships. I have never been a woman who's afraid of this topic of conversation. In fact, I like to learn about it. Well, my boyfriend is very similar to me a few years ago, someone who wants things to work out and who will for a while be a bit nervous about certain flaws that he has to avoid. I instantly understood what scared him. At the moment, I understood for the first time what Romy was talking about. You left your whole world being for someone, and was much surprised that part of me also felt a little bit nervous about telling my part of the story. And even so, when I saw how he smiled and being able to talk a little about it, it was one of the best feelings that I could have, because I realized that the confidence of leaving things in the past, focusing on the future, is greater than a thousand the gifts of an anniversary, because the person that you love don't live under pressure. Fromm tells us in his book that the true way to love someone, the mature, correct, and lasting one, is when two souls become one but remain two. Loving does not mean giving everything for someone, and even giving as such you hide because it terrifies you, because you believe that faces, facets, and actions will drive away that person you love. We could never be more wrong. I made a confession to my boyfriend that only my sisters know today, without counting a couple of close friends. When I confessed to him that I am bisexual, what he expected me to do was say goodbye and out of there, or jealousy, but that never came. On the contrary, he was only surprised. He was happy. He made me a curious analogy about movie characters, and in the end he told me, what I'm going to do is that you are. The orientation is part of you, and that fascinates me because you're different from other girls that I know. I cried, I admit it, because never so long a person who matters a lot to me in a personal way accepted in that way what caused me terror to confess. Eric Fromm tells us that two people, even when joined, remain in two, and that is what I have been applying in my relationship, and to be honest, I have never felt more comfortable and that I can see a future in it without losing what I am. Georgia loving is living next to someone without fear to be criticized, and if you fall in love with her, you do it with everything that he person entails, because he or she must do the same with you. You must trust, give and receive the love that they profess, because it's the matter of two, not just one. An example of this is the man that complains a lot about when a woman are strict mistakes when you forget an anniversary, if you don't give them something at first. I didn't understand it either until I saw what it's like to be interested in someone who really appreciates you. A good woman don't expect the most expensive gift in the world because love does not buy. A good woman only wants an act that reminds her that the person who chooses her loves her for life. Because once he married, he dedicates herself to the home. Irons, washes, cooks, raises, cares, and wants to keep the place in perfect condition where she loves every day. A flower, a kiss, or a clumsy hug is the least they could give her. They reflect the same with men. A good man does not expect something material either. He wants recognition, that his children and wife value the work that it is for him to get up and go to work day after day to maintain his home. But as I said, to give is to receive and vice versa. One cannot demand if it demerits the work of the others, in this case his partner. And from there derives much more. Respect or responsibility, because love is having a strong responsibility to want to take care of or protect each part of the individual. Their smile screen them every day from what he sees badly or having insecurity in their person, but not to the degree of idealize. You should never love and do the most wonderful thing in your life. It's part of it, yes, but that does not mean that is the only thing that you should focus on, because a life is not based on love. It helps you cope with everything you do, but it's not the only thing in her. The current world has too many defects. Humanity lost every moment we spend in front of a television or telephone. For this reason, we believe that love is a phenomenon and the true love does not exist. Now in these times of pandemic, it is difficult to find someone, but not impossible. Love is complicated. You can think now, because it was a lot to follow, many guidelines, and that is also a lie, because where comes my question from the beginning? Do you remember it? How many times we stand in front of the mirror and you say aloud, "You're beautiful, let's be someone today"? Do you really have your answer? Yes? Alright. I will tell you, no one or two or three do it, but they don't do it constantly, once a month, a year, a week. That is okay? They don't recommend it every day either, because otherwise you will develop pride, which is nothing a good thing. The answer of the art of loving, the right way to do it, is to love yourself before giving love to someone else. As long as you look in the mirror and notice a shadow of loneliness and there is a disgusting in your face when watching you, let me tell you that you're not ready yet, because you will not give yourself the place you deserve in a relationship. Friend was a genius, don't you think? Love yourself to be able to love and be loved. Thank you.
How does Sigmund Freud describe the love? Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was an Austrian neurologist of Jewish origin, the father of the psychoanalysis, and one of the greatest intellectual figures of the 20th century. For the Freud, we as individuals, from the first years of the life, the subject is affected, in the best of cases, for the love of the other. Later, he will compete to be the only one worthy of said love, but will find himself in the obsidious complex, hating the loved object, as well as loving the hated object. It is under this premise that Freud makes three major contributions to the doctrine of the love life, which are: first, love arose from the act. The myth that Freud constructs dictates that in science times there was a primordial heart ruled by tyrannical and violent father who enjoined the property of all the families and instilled fear in the males, whom he expelled when they reached youth, for the becoming skillful rivals. The expelled brothers had to ally themselves, encouraged by their anger and the jealousy towards the tyrant, and together they precipitate what individually would have been impossible, Freud describes. In this sense, the act is a radical distinction in the act articulate from the symbolic and from the imaginary. The real is the impossible. Not a simple stop against what we read or hate, but the logical stop of what, of the symbolic, is enunciated and impossible. From here comes the real. Second, love is repetitions. Freud introduced the thesis in the three essays of sexual theory. In a paragraph entitled "The Finding of the Object," he tells you there, during the process of puberty, the primacy of genital areas is affirmed, and in the male, the impetus of the erect member imperiously remits to the new sexual goal, to penetrate a body cavity that excites the genital area. At the same time, from the physical side, the finding of the object is consummate prepared from the earliest childhood. Afterwards, the sexual drive becomes regularly autoerotic, and only after the period has passed due, they mark the path to object choice. Other seeds of the same origin allow man, always propping himself up his childhood, to develop more than one sexual series and to shape totally varied conditions for the choice of object. Well, the formation of series comes to realize that the object is lost. The gap between the satisfaction sought and the satisfaction found testifies to a crack that is impossible to fill, which is another way of reading the Lacanian praise. 3 is no sexual relationship formulable in the structure. The determination that presides over the choice that will from the series is underlined and how it responds to a loss that has left indelible marks of specific life. Third, love has the sense of deception. The file of love is presented for Freud as one of the ways privileged accesses for the study of narcissism. Here, as always happens in the realm of libido, man has shown himself unable to renounce the satisfaction he once enjoyed. He does not want to deprive himself of the narcissistic perfection of his childhood. He tries to regain in the new form of the ego ideal. What he projects in front as well as his ideal is the substitute for the lost narcissism of childhood, in which he was his own ideal of his. And it is as the end of this that Freud tells you in your ideation of love. What is sought in the other is that pound of flesh, that partial head, that part of the injured body that is lost and that constitutes the foundation of the desired subject because, consequently, we only love with our lack. He we love becomes humble. Thus, we love, so to speak, renounce a part of the narcissism. Sigmund Freud.
Continuing with the theoretical framework, I will talk about hypersexualization. And maybe you have the question, what is it? Well, the hypersexualization is a phenomenon that consists in the exaltation of a person's sexual attributes over other qualities. In the case of girls, boys, and teenagers, this phenomenon has been made invisible, normalized, and even legitimized through the media and social networks due to their current social and cultural reach. How affects? The hypersexualization can be the root of more extreme forms of violence. It is estimated that 1 in 10 women between the age of 12 and 17 in Mexico has received messages, sexual videos, or threats on the internet. Children and teenagers need to be taught by example that everything they post online, from comments and images to videos shared on social networks, can no longer be considered private materials.
Hello, I am Garcia Morales Almedizabeth and I'm going to talk about the hedonism. The hedonism is a family of theories that all of which have in common that pleasure plays a central role in them, which are psychological or motivational hedonism, that claims that our behavior is determined by the desires to increase pleasure and to decrease pain. Normative or ethical hedonism, on the other hand, is not about how we actually act, but how we ought to act. We should pursue pleasure and avoid pain. Axiological hedonism, which is sometimes treated as a part of ethical hedonism, is the thesis that only pleasure has intrinsic value, holds that pleasure and pain are the only constituents of well-being, and thereby the only things that are good for someone. These technical definitions of hedonism within philosophy, which are usually seen as respectable schools of thought, have to be distinguished from how the term is used in natural language. In this sense, it has a negative connotation, linked to the egoistic pursuit of short-term gratification by indulging in sensory pleasures without regard for the consequences. In the ancient Greek philosophy, we have two schools of thought: the Cyrenaic school by Aristotle of Cyrene and the Epicureans by Epicurus of Samos. The Cyrenaic school was founded in the 4th century BC by Aristotle of Cyrene, disciple of Socrates. He considered pleasure as the main objective, that is, as an end that when is quickly achieved, is possible to achieve happiness. emphasizes that the pleasure of the body is over to the mental pleasures. It states that pleasure is chosen for oneself, the opposite case of happiness, which is nothing more than the set of different pleasures. Pleasure is guided by prudence because it is the man who must dominate pleasure and not let himself be dominated by it. Based on Socrates' claim that happiness is one of the ends of moral actions, Aristippus maintained that pleasure was the highest good. He says that bodily gratifications, which he considered intense, were preferable to mental ones. The Cyrenaics also denied that immediate gratification for long-term gains was postponed, defying with the Epicureans. Now let's talk about the Epicureans. The Epicureans was a movement founded around 300 BC by Epicurus of Samos. Its objective was to avoid suffering by seeking happiness. Therefore, the main objective for the human being should be the achievement of happiness, prioritizing the satisfaction obtained by the desires to survive and moderating those that are natural but not vital. Among the natural and necessary desires, we find the basic physical needs, such as food, quench thirst, shelter, and a sense of security. Among the natural and unnecessary desires are pleasant conversation, sexual gratification, and the arts. Among the unnatural and unnecessary desires are fame, political power, prestige, and those generated by companies. Epicurus argued that the highest pleasure consists in a simple material life, complemented by a philosophical discussion between friends. He emphasized that it was not good to do something that makes you feel good if after experience it will denigrate later experience and not allow you to feel good. Epicurus made some recommendations regarding these categories. We must satisfy the necessary natural desires in the cheapest way possible. We can pursue unnecessary natural desires to the satisfaction of our heart, not referring to ourselves, but trying to bring selfishness to the pleasure of another person. We should not risk health, friendship, or the economy in the pursuit of satisfying an unnecessary desire, as this only leads to future suffering. Unnatural and unnecessary desires must be completely avoided, as the pleasure or satisfaction they produce is fleeting. Now let's talk about a extreme part of the hedonism. We start with the libertinage. The libertinage is an extreme form of hedonism that views moral and sexual restraint as either unnecessary or harmful. Famous proponents are Marquis de Sade and John Wilmot, 2nd Earl of Rochester. Now we have the utilitarianism. It is an ethical theory holding that the proper course of action is the one that maximizes the overall good of the society. It is thus one form of consequentialism, meaning that the moral worth of an action is determined by its resulting outcome. The most influential contributors to this theory are the British philosophers Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Conjoining hedonism as a view as to what is good for people to utilitarianism has the result that all actions should be directed toward achieving the greatest total amount of happiness. For last, let's talk about hedonism in nowadays. Within contemporary philosophy, we have the figure of Michel Onfray, a French philosopher and an open proponent of hedonism, who states in an interview that it is believed that the hedonist is one who phrases property, wealth, having, which is a consumer. That is a vulgar hedonism that society encourages. I propose a philosophical hedonism that is largely the opposite of being redundant and having, which does not involve money, but rather a modification of behavior, to achieve a real presence in the world and joyful enjoy existence. Smell better, like, listen better, not be angry, with the body, and consider patience and drives as friends and not as an adversaries. And to conclude, we are going to see 3 examples of hedonism in our popular culture. To start, we have the TV show Futurama, and here we have 2 characters, Hedonist Bud and Bender, one of the stars of the show. The character Hedonist Bud is always reclining on a couch, being fed with grapes, or having warm chocolate drizzled over his solid cold body. The show also has Bender, and he's an incredible hedonist bud who loves liquor, cigarettes, cruel pranks, and all kinds of unseemly behavior. The show's writers took the familiar image of robots and turned it on its heads by portraying robots as hedonists. And in this first example, we can see what Michael Frey catalogs as a vulgar hedonism. In the second example, we have the game Sims. And in this game, you can create characters with aspirations, but one of the options is pleasure. These characters in the pleasure option just want to play around, dance, and have fun. They are perfect hedonists, but as all of us, they have to go to work in order to make enough money to pay off their pleasurable habits. And this is an example, this can be an example of the Epicurean hedonism, that you can have fun, but you can think about your economy. And the last one, we have Timon and Pumbaa from The Lion King. And this, when we first met them, are major hedonism. They roam around the jungle, eating, sleeping, singing, and having a good time. During his time hanging out with Timon and Pumbaa, Simba forgets about his home and his responsibilities, and gives himself up entirely to the hedonism. In this last example, we can see the Cyrenaic school soak of hedonism. And thank you for your attention. And let's continue.
Love from a niche perspective. What makes us human to human? When Nietzsche speaks in his work about love, he points out it as the only salvation of the individual, as the act which reaches its highest point is the exaltation of erotic love between two people. It refers to love as a possession, the object of desire. What we want ours, we want it at all cost. First selfish act. And this is what Eros entails, a love in which we feel complete. What makes us human is the longing for the object, but at the same time being so separate from and by others object of desire. The possibility of feeling a multiple desiring urges, waiting the object. Love it reaches a fragmentation. According to him, when desire reaches its peak, it turns into love. Possession is as much a part of love as freedom. The difference between this is that possession is an act that one chooses to impose, and freedom is something already imposed. In each, it's pronounced. Love is the feeling of property or of what we want to make our property. In his work, Human to Human, one of the most important of his thought, Nietzsche thought that love was important and had to reflect complete equality between lovers, without any kind of hierarchy between them. He distinguishes love from respect on the basis that respect is the result of a fear of an authority figure, which in love should not exist. For the German philosopher, men were gentler beings and embodied with the idea of love. They were sensitive and sought at all costs the love of her beloved. Weak women could, with just a few words, destroy everything they fought for. He reaffirms this idea when he maintains, in revenge and in love, the woman is more barbaric than the man. With the above, he showed his hatred or resentment towards women, because having never experienced couple love, he considered it a utopia or a small course. So later in his later texts, he seemed to choose self-love and let go of it.